Greetings.
Greetings, President John. How you doing?
Greetings, Chapter Mitchell. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Right. Sorry, Brother Omaysus, you may continue.
Okay. To live on the achievements of others is to really admit the superiority of others and the inferiority of self. As a fact, it is by such comparisons that the Negro is judged as an inferior being. Nothing that is handed to the Negro by somebody else should be sufficiently satisfactory to the Negro. He should seek to surround it with originality and then claim it as his own. He is justified in remodeling and reshaping the things to suit himself because there's nothing new under the sun. Whatever other people have, the Negro is the father of civilization. He constructed the first government in Africa and thereby taught others the way. Always seek to improve on whatever you see fit to adopt. Never leave it at where you adopted it, because somebody else will claim it and prove their right to it. When you have added to it or taken away from it, you can prove that it is not the same thing. Therefore, it is yours. Always carefully and thoroughly investigate the, the accomplishments of other races. Try to improve and beat them at those achievements and keep your achievements a secret from them. Never open up the facts of your achievements to the others because they are too anxious to get the last word on anything that is worthwhile. Always hide the secrets of your achievements while demonstrating those achievements. It must be like a chemist selling his preparation or demonstrating it without giving away his formula. Because the moment he does so, there will be many similar preparations on the market. Each institution of people has its special objects to attain and may not fit in with the idealism of other people. So the Negro should have his own. He is not to be a slave to other people's idealism. In, in some detail or other, make sure you with me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. In some detail or other, each people's institutions must differ from yours according to their particular idealism. The Jew could never be a Negro in his institutional line, nor an Anglo-Saxon a Latin, nor a Latin a Teuton, nor neither a Negro. Therefore, a Negro must not try to be either, but in his institutional line, be himself. Like the Jew, whom nature made a Jew for a particular purpose, therefore he must be different, both in his habits, in his way of living, and in his idealism. All people have separate and distinct functions, and they should keep to those functions. The archangels in heaven have their functions, the cherubims have theirs, and the seraphims have theirs, and so with humanity. Following God and heaven's example, there is no reason why the Negro should not have his. And when he doesn't, he is not living the proper life in accordance with the purpose for which nature made him. Your entire your entire physio-
Physiognomy.
your entire physiognomy is different from the other people. Your hair is woolly, your nose is broad, your lips are thick, and so this is different. So this difference must also be intended in your outlook and in your viewpoint of life. Anyone who tells you the contrary is a liar and a fraud. In fact, enemy to you and to nature. In this human world of confusion, never let anyone tell you that although of different races, you are one. If you were one, God would have made you so because he is not a deceiver. The Ethiopian is spoken of as being different. Even in the scripture, it is said that he could not change his skin. Think what that means. It is fair assumption that others may change their skins, not the Ethiopian. Who is the Negro? The black man. So there must be something. Uh, who is the Negro? The black man. All right. So there must be something permanent and lasting and eternal about the black man. God knows why he fixes it so. Don't try to change it by subterfuge or by inferential fraud. What a grand thing it is to know that while all other things change, you, because of your race, cannot change. Tell this to the world. Tell them how lasting you are. And when they doubt it, send them to their Bible, which you yourself never wrote. It emphasizes the greater truth that it may be so, because even those who wish to otherwise have to acknowledge in respect of virtue, the black man evidently was the first man. Adam and Eve were black. Their two children, Cain and Abel, were black. When Cain slew Abel and God appeared to ask him for his brother, he was shocked that he turned white, being the affliction of leprosy and such. He became the progenitor the progenitor of a new race born out of double sin. The white man is Cain transformed, hence his career of murder from Cain to Mussolini. It is evident and fair assumption that when Cain ran away and disappeared from the neighborhood of his parents and journeyed afar, he built up a new race, living living in the same country but far away. And in the process of time in Africa, where all this happened, the Negro race through Adam and Eve continued their multiplication, and as it spread itself in the development of a civilization, it came suddenly upon the settlement of Cain. And knowing Cain's history of blood, ran the entire race from the neighborhood across the Mediterranean into Europe. The white race of Cain hid in caves for centuries. Therefore, their white skin became fixed because most of the time they were hidden from the light. Hence, the white man as a European. That's
Oh, we're not finished. Well, Omaysus, it's another section.
the world. The world is only part of the creation and an atom of universe. It is a complete entity of creation, relationship with other entities in the creation. Man is made up of mind and matter. Matter is manifested through nature, and mind is the connecting link with the spirit of God. The highest mind in the world is the mind of man, and that behind it is the spirit of God, giving the mind free will to go through the soul, and to go through the soul. The soul is mind, as well as the feeling of heart is soul and mind. The explanation of this is as intricate as that of the Trinity: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. As God rules the universe and all matter and mind, so man through his mind rules the world over which he is Lord. The whole world then belongs to man. Each man should get appropriate or his appropriate or proportionate share. When in a lifetime he fails to get this, he naturally fails to lift himself up to his lordship. One man's dispossessions of his lordship enthrones another man's sovereignty over him. Hence, a ruling man and a serving man, a ruling race and a serving race. Never be a race of servers, but a race of sovereign lords. Control the world, because the world is your province. The world will not yield more than you want it to yield. But if you know the world, you can make the world yield much, whatever you want. Always try to master the world. To master the world, you must know the world. Hence, you must pass outside of your own district, country, and county and country to know the world and possess it. Scroll down. To know the world,
Thank you.
possess it.
Oh, sorry. Man,
Find a page back in the book. Because to know the world, to know the world and possess it, because all that is in it is yours for the getting. Go out and get it. There is no other rival but your fellow man. Never allow your fellow man to rise higher than you. Otherwise, he will make you his slave. If you do not use the world well by understanding it, it will destroy you through its matter and through its mind. You treat the world well by knowing it thoroughly, the world will serve you obediently. Always dispute the right of any other man's superiority over you in the world. Fear no other man but God, for God is your superior, but man is always your equal. So long as you rise to his attainments. You may rise to his attainments through the extraordinary use of your mind. Mind is matter. Mind is king. When it goes wrong, it loses its sceptre. It means right and wields the sceptre and sits upon a throne. Always be on a throne. It's your prerogative. It is your right because you are the Lord and master of the earth and all things therein. In going through the world, hold your head and courage high, for you must always remember that you are man and the ruler of the world. Remember that you rule the world through your mind. Think high. Think in a way to make you know all around and about you. Be sure to know. Knowledge is everywhere. It is hidden. Search for it. And when else knows about it, keep it and use it for the good of yourself and your race. Your first duty in the world is to yourself, your family, your race, and your racial nation. Then, yeah, thank you for allowing another man to know more than you. You scroll down, brother.
Yeah.
Catching up in the book. If you allow another man to know more than you, he will lead you up to the precipice, and if it suits his purpose, he will let you fall in. Therefore, know as much as he does and more, so that he may not lead you blindly. When you have to follow another man because you don't know, you are taking a dangerous risk. He may bury you. He may hide you away to suit his convenience. Therefore, while you walk through the world, always be on guard. Trying to lose your mind, trying to lose your mental balance, trying to lose your sense of perception. Because in losing these things, you are doomed in the world. There's nothing man cannot know except the divine and almighty mysteries of God. All that is possible to man may know by seeking knowledge that is in the world. Always try to be self-sufficient in yourself. Where it is impossible, seek that self-sufficiency in your racial relations, comradeships, or in your race. Always see to it that your race is self-sufficient. That means that everything you want must be obtainable in your race as far as human relationships will permit. If you are not individually self-sufficient or operative in your racial relations or self-sufficient in your race as a whole, you will have to go outside of yourself for that sufficiency, which will make you absolutely dependent on the goodwill of others for your sufficiency. No one will give away value that is wanted for self. So you will have to serve and become servants or slaves to sufficiency. Never wait on another man's pocketbook. Use your own because he may never show up. He may die on the way. Your wait will be too long.
Thank you, First Vice President Omaysus. That completes the reading for Lesson 12, Institution, the Purpose of Institution. Before we get into the questions on the previous lesson, were there any questions or comments or any observations from what we just read, Lesson 11? We will have questions on Lesson 12 next week. So read that lesson again over the week and be ready next week for, well, no, not next week. We'll be off next week for holidays, give everybody some time with family and everything. And then in January, first Tuesday in January, we'll come back. Okay, give me, I still need like 5 minutes on these last couple questions. I can start on some. Well, it's gonna be hard. I'll do it though. At least get y'all going on some of them. The first ones I feel like are, I don't know, straightforward. We'll get into it. I like this lesson on man. And Sister Lady President, Sister K. I'm glad you were able to join us tonight, because as I was reading through the questions on man, and even listening to First Vice President Brother Omaysus talk about the purpose of institution, it brings up a lot of some of the things that we talked about last week in regards to private education, and the situation in which you can have publicly known information, but there's more to the education other than just reading the book, and that greater level of education or greater level of understanding happens in institutions, in private institutions mostly. That's what we're trying to do here with this course, although this course is free to the, well, not free to the public, but it's open to the public. The book was published, I believe, in '85, so it's been out, 36 years. But when it comes to the in-depth knowledge, I don't think anybody is going to go through this book like we go through it in the UNIA. And I don't think anybody will have the history or the level of knowledge that we should have as members of the UNIA, as Garveyites, and as leaders to carry on that legacy. So there should be a special type of education that's applied to information to make it personal for the race. But with that, I think that kind of gets into the question. So let me type this last, well, it's the last answer that I've got typed up, but it's more to it. Let me just type this in. Some more work on the second slide. It's not finished. We're going to say the pledge on the way out. Okay. But one of my favorite quotes, and I'll keep repeating it, but comes from the book, page 6, the value of knowledge is to use it. So we're not just here to go through this course and say that we went through the course. We're here to apply what we're learning specifically for the benefit of our race. It makes no point in, I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to call out quote unquote elders that have all this information, but they're not using it. Not a Garveyite mentality. If we have information, we have things that can benefit our people, there's no point, just keeping it in our heads. So we got to use it. We got to apply the knowledge. So lesson 11 from last week talked about man. Do y'all remember? So I'll just do a brief recap. But man is a subsection of lesson 8, the social system, which talked about society and how society is made up of a group of individuals, but man kind of goes down a deeper level into the issues of society, and it talks about how the issues of society are related to the issues of man. And Garvey starts off the lesson, the first half of the lesson, he talks about inherent qualities of man and things that we should be aware of. In regards to man, we shouldn't be naive. We are an organization and we are organizers. So it's our job to go out and talk to people and recruit people but we have to be, this lesson kind of gives us a warning, a forewarning in regards to what to expect from our people. And then the second half of the lesson, he talks about education, and he talks about kind of the solutions to what he details as man's problems in the first part of the lesson. And one thing we got to keep in mind is the aspect of race first. So Garvey doesn't specifically, in some of it in education, he specifically says black man, and he talks about the Negro race, Negro education, things like that. But in the first half, he doesn't really distinguish race or anything like that. He just says man. So I have to assume that the first half is all people, black, white, or races. But then the second half, in regards to education, Garvey is getting specific with us as black people, as the Negro race, and the things that we can do to specifically reverse the situation for our people, but not necessarily for all people. All right, now, first question. Greetings, Lady President Baltimore has joined us. Thank you for joining us. And we got a couple other people. Thank y'all for joining us. Yeah, we were a little bit late today. It's all my fault, but thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in and staying with us. So first question. Why must man be regarded as dangerous? Why? That's the first thing that Garvey talks about in this lesson is man being considered dangerous. Why must we regard man as dangerous?
Said they can't be trusted. He said you got to get to know him, and then once you get to know him, then you go off the levels of what you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well summarized. But the first thing that Garvey says in the book,
saying they fell from their high place.
Say again. I'm sorry.
Because of their sin, they fell from their high place.
Yes. Both of you are absolutely right. Let me go to the text. But this is the grounding of this lesson. First thing he says, man, because of his sin, which caused him to have fallen from his high state of spiritual cleanliness to the level of a creature who acts only for his own satisfaction out of gift of free will, must be regarded as a dangerous creature of life. We've fallen from our high state, but and Sister Ebony, you are absolutely right. You answer some of the, you kind of go into some of the other questions that I have, but this lesson is somewhat repetitive. But one of the key things is man in general acts only for his own satisfaction. And that's something that we have to be aware of, be conscious of. It's not natural for men, for man or women, not just man, but for human beings to do things for other people. That's something we have to be taught. But our natural state is otherwise. Okay. Okay, so this one, let me see. So in this lesson, Garvey talks about calculating for the vices of man. Let me see. He says, in dealing with him, you must calculate for his vices and his damnable evils. He is apt to disappoint you at any time. There was a previous lesson that we talked about preparing for the vices of man and the bad things of man. Do we know what lesson that was, and do we know what word was used? When have we talked about calculating for the vices of man? It was recent. It's lesson 9. in lesson 9, let me see if I got the page written down. Yes, page 77. Keep stopping share. I'm not trying to stop. I'm trying to just stop over. So on page 77, that's where we had the word scamp. But I'm using this question to show the lessons, they build on one another and they're somewhat repetitive. And that's why I'm of the opinion that the hidden lessons, that the ones that are not written, they're still in this book. Because Garvey, when you look at Garveyism or the philosophies and opinions of Garvey as a whole, he says the same things, but he says it different ways. So there are certain things that are repeating themes. But let me see, where's this word at? Okay, here it is. Morally, a diplomat must be a scamp in that he must be a mental twister. He cannot deal with the affairs with a clean conscience because he is to anticipate the evil of other men's designs, because the world and mankind are immoral and dishonest in their behavior. This is on page 77 in the lesson on diplomacy. And then we get to man, the lesson on man, and he says some of the same things. Let me see. Page 92. I think I just read this already. In dealing with him, you must calculate for his vices and damnable evils. He is apt to disappoint you at any time, therefore you cannot wholly rely on him as an individual. Not the one I was looking for, is it? Oh yeah, calculating for his vices. That was the word, calculate for his vices. Okay. All right. Next question. Who is man always in conflict with? Man is always in conflict with someone or something. Yeah. Who is it?
Other men.
Other men?
Oh no, I'm sorry. In this one it says good and evil.
What's before good and evil? You know, it seems like you ain't got the book open.
Nah, I do have it beside me, but I was going off my head.
Okay.
I think it says self.
Yeah, it says. Yep, that's it right there. Page 92. Man is always in conflict with himself, as between good and evil. That's why I thought you had it open, because you got the good and evil. Because he is always in conflict with himself, as between good and evil. So these are just things we have to be aware of when dealing with our people, and understanding that we're naturally always in conflict with ourselves, in the battle between good and evil. We're not inherently good and we're not inherently bad. It's a constant struggle. What were some of the examples of wickedness of man that Garvey listed?
The wives killing their husbands, husbands killing their wives.
Wives killing their husbands. Yes. Biblical examples.
Cain killed Abel, and Jacob robbing Esau of his birthright.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's just to show, again, historically, we've always had these issues since the beginning of time. Man has been wicked. And I've thought about this, but Cain slew Abel. And we got to think about it. And that's why, I think this is what Garvey's trying to relay, but men in our natural state, we're vicious. We can be killers. Like, nobody had to teach Cain how to kill Abel. That was a natural response. So we don't have to be taught how to be bad and how to be vicious and how to do things to survive. But on the other hand, we have to be taught how to be good. We have to be taught to be kind. We have to be taught to share. We have to be taught to look after one another. So just reinforcing this concept that, we have to be careful with individuals because based on history, men are savage beasts that will do what it takes for their own survival and their own benefit. Until we know a man personally, what should we regard him as? So close, yeah. It's a specific word I'm looking for, but you know how I do that sometimes.
Evil.
The word is vile.
Just switch the letters around.
I mean, that's like, I'm not, not super critical on the exact word as long as we have the understanding. Let's see, page 93. Man, therefore, is the abstract creature who is vile until we know him personally. But this is actually talks about, we have heard of wives killing their husbands, husbands killing their wives, and just talking about the wickedness of man. So therefore, man, therefore, is an abstract creature who we consider vile until we know him personally. So if you don't know, the natural default is, this person is dangerous, basically. But we still have to be organizers and, work with our people, but we just have to be aware. In dealing with man, what should you trust? Hold on, let me see about this. Yeah, in dealing with man, what should you trust? Who should you trust?
Your own instinct.
Yes, sir. Yes. Is that right after that? No, it's down here. Therefore, in dealing with man, trust your own character and your own judgment more than depending absolutely on his. But most of the time, his advice to you is probably detrimental. Is wrong and calculatingly so as to put you at a disadvantage. So, just the fact that men are always, people are always out for themselves. So if you ask a person a question that you think will be a benefit to you, it will most likely be a benefit to the person that you're asking. So we must trust ourselves first and foremost. All right, next question. The history, let me pull up the history. What has history shown man to be? The history of the world has shown man to be something. Two things, actually. The history of the world has shown man to be what? What is the history of man? What has history shown man to be? Again, this is kind of repetitive.
Dangerous.
Pretty much. Garvey says chief murderer or killer.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
he said nobody
that would be synonymous.
No creature has killed more than the man on the planet.
Exactly. The history of the world shows that man has been the chief murderer or killer. He has killed more creatures than any other being. He plans his murders, which he may execute on individuals or large groups of men, and he generally does this for profit, national profit, racial profit. So, man has been the chief murderer and killer, and he's done it for personal benefit. I was going to answer the next question. I was about to say this, but I think it's the next question. It's not the next question, but it's up here somewhere. What two things should coincide within a man before you trust him?
His words and his actions.
When you meet a person, say again?
And what he say he gonna do and his execution of it. I think that's how he worded it.
Pretty much, yes. his conduct must coincide with what he states. So as President Marul would say, the tongues in our shoes must match the tongues in our mouths. But if you have somebody saying one thing but not living what they're saying, that's an automatic red flag, fall back. But what's up? I don't know where that one is. All right, I can't find it. I put the page. All right, I can't find the page on that one. We're gonna, but I know y'all. I ain't lying. The first vice president, you have it correct. Hold on. So I missed the question. Okay. On page 95, by the way. But one question that I missed is, Garvey said in the book, and he's talking about man again, and I was getting ready to say it, but when he says all of these things about man and about man's character and his natural state, Garvey says to be forewarned is to be what? What is it? To be warned ahead of time is to be, y'all know? Do I just need to pull it up?
At an advantage?
Yes, to an extent, but it's a specific word. Here it is. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So, again, going back to the lesson 1, I believe, the value of knowledge is to use it. And then Garvey, gives the history, talks about the history of man, the violence of man, the wickedness of man. And then he also says to be forewarned is to be forearmed. So, as we go out into the community to organize, we're not ignorant anymore. We have to be, you've been warned, basically. All right. But that's, that shouldn't stop us from doing the work. Shouldn't stop the real dedicated Garveyites from doing the work. But at the same time, we've been warned. So, next question. In regards to man, what is our mission as Garveyites and how do we accomplish it? So with all of this, the vileness of man, and we have to be organizers, we have to work with man. So as Garveyites, what is our mission when it comes to man and how do we accomplish that mission?
To make a better man and to lead by example.
Make a better man is correct. Lead by example. I don't disagree with that. But there's another level to it. Because, even what I was going to say, they could still ignore it. I was going to say they can ignore your good example, but they can ignore the other thing as well. Yes, the first thing, our mission is to make man good, as Garvey said, but how do we do that? Give you a brief hint. Well, y'all should. I don't even want to give you a hint because we should. This is almost a test in itself.
I could have sworn he said somewhere in there about being a good example.
Say again? You could have sworn he said lead by example.
Somewhere in there.
You're probably right, but all right, let me just get to it. So here it is. Always let your mission be to make man good. Therefore, talk to man always from the loftiest pinnacle. So you're talking, I was going to say, yeah, and that's the reason why I say this is kind of like a test, because when you look at what we've studied thus far, intelligence, universal knowledge and how to get it, being studious, reading the Bible 4 hours a day, understanding the link between Simon the Cyrenian, you know, who we definitely know was a black man, and the cross, and imparting that information to our people and letting them know they have that link. The origins of civilization in Nile Valley. You know, this is just lesson 1. Lesson 2, characteristics of leadership, superiority, racial superiority, and not in a arrogant sense, but from our racial history. You know, again, going back to the leaders of, you know, the progenitors of civilization. You know, we're superior. Our aims and objectives, elocution, you know, how to speak, health, God, death, Christ, the example, character and conduct, the social system, and how man plays a part in the social system, diplomacy, working with other nations, economy, finances, and improving personal finances as well as organizational finances. So all of this stuff is a toolbox, you know, for having a conversation with man to promote them to the loftiest of pinnacles. All of this information that we've studied thus far, when we talk to our people, it should help to elevate their sense of self-worth, and you know, make them more confident in themselves. So, hope that makes sense. Any questions on that? I feel like I talked for a little bit, but I think that's important. That's an important question in regards to this lesson, because we spend so much time in the beginning talking about how vile man is and how wicked he is, and now we're getting into solutions. You know, how to, what is our goal and how do we achieve that goal? So I think it's an important question. If there aren't any questions, we will get to the next section called education. I don't think I have all the questions prepared for this. I might have to like ask them, and they're not typed up. Next question: what is the present system of education calculated for? What is the present system of education calculated for, specifically in regards to the majority and the minority?
Subjugate them.
Subjugate who?
The minority over the majority.
Yes. Page 95. We'll go straight to it. Don't let Brother Omaysus, our first vice president, take all the credit. I know y'all know some of these answers. But he says, the present system of education, as he starts this section, the present system of education is calculated to subjugate the majority and elevate the minority. He says, let me see if this was another question or if I can read ahead. I think that was the last one I had typed up. So. He says the system was devised and has been promulgated by agents of the minority. The system was carefully thought out by those who desire to control others for their benefit and to the disadvantage of others. Okay. But yes, the current system of education, especially American education that we live in and we live under, is calculated to subjugate the majority and elevate the minority. Give me a second to get this question. I got it identified, but I don't have it worded. I don't know how to get a question on this one. All right, I might have to come back to that one. Oh, okay. And now this kind of touches on the question that was brought up last week about public education or access to public information. So I'm gonna have to, I guess I'm gonna have to word it. So if a Negro attends a university with students of another race, what would prevent that Negro from getting an equal education, opposed to the students of the other race? Yeah, what? All right, yeah. So if a Negro attends a institution with other races, what would not allow? Like, why would that Negro not get the same type of education as the other races? That's the question.
Because it's geared towards that race.
Say again?
Because the education, the syllabus is geared towards the white race and not all races. It's just one-sided.
No, that's not what I'm looking for. Garvey talks about that a little bit later. He talks about how whoever determines the system of education, those that are alien to the race that created the education, basically become a slave to the education. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm trying to.
He said, he was talking about clubs and fraternities. He said something about not having access to the same clubs and fraternities as the white students would.
Yes. So, and this is, when it comes to public information, you can have public information, but still have private institutions or private fraternities or private groups. So let me read it. There's always a limited process in the education of other races by the race that originates the system of education. So if a white person create a system of education, it's going to be limited education for others that are not white. As for instance, if a Negro attends a university with other students of the race that originated or projects the educational system, while the Negro would have the privilege of the classroom for general instructions to learn commonly, he may not have the privilege of his fellow students of other races who may be admitted to certain club fraternities within the university from which he would be disbarred. So you're in the class, you're in the school, you got the book, you think you're getting the same education, but there's a whole nother class that's taking place that you're not being included in and not being invited to. Such fraternities generally enjoy the privilege of special instructions and special discussions, which convey a wider range of enlightenment on the subjects taught than would be possible to a Negro. And I'll stop there for a second, but like I said, this book has been published since '85, and I'm sure there have been study groups about it, and people trying to come together and pull the information out of it. But not everybody is included or invited to this group. So we have to make this group and the information that we discuss amongst this group very special information that you can only get if you come to this group. So, white people, or any other race, I don't want to just specifically beat up on white people or jump on white people, but any other race can have this book and study this book. But if you're not a part of our race, you can't be a part of our study groups. Is that clear? Does that make sense? And that it also goes for those people that, think they're getting a benefit by attending a white institution, and think that they're better than others because they went to a white institution. But they may not even realize that they were excluded from some private information. Questions, comments on that?
Race first.
Race first, yes, sir. Okay. I'll follow up on that. Let me see. Man, yeah, this is hard to question. Write this in the question. Okay, well, I'm just talking through it. So, Garvey says on page 97. Let me try to do this without giving too much. But based on all of that we're talking about, and the issues of man, and the benefit of private groups and fraternities and clubs like we have here, basically what Garvey's saying is, since those things exist for other people, therefore it is necessary for the Negro to be additionally educated or re-educated after he has imbibed the present system of education. Since we're here, we really don't have a choice as to being indoctrinated into American education. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, we've all been indoctrinated. And Garvey says, we have to have an additional education to give us, as he says as they say in the introduction, a Afrocentric point of view in regards to our solutions for our people. It can't be American-centric or Eurocentric, which is what we would normally naturally have being born here in America. We have to re-educate ourselves and develop the Afrocentric standpoint. And that's what this course is about, and that's why these lessons are so important. But what I was going to ask is, what does Garvey say is the best way to re-educate our people outside of American indoctrination, or after American indoctrination? What's the best way to re-educate our people? It's an important question. We should know this. This should be why we're here, right? We're trying to, be re-educated. What's the best way to do it?
Do it racial. The
What's
best
that?
way to
That's
do
what we doing now? Studying
Yes,
what we should be doing?
yes,
Yes, the
absolutely.
group that I'm in
Anybody else
now.
want to add?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just agreeing with what you
Well,
said, yes.
Anybody else before I go to the answer?
All I'm gonna say is, you ain't gonna give me the page and don't expect me to read it word for word. The best way to
Say
do
again?
this, the best way to do this is to educate him racially in the home, meeting hall, or his own club, where he will be put under the closest scrutiny and an analysis of what appears to be education.
Yes. So yes, the best way to re-educate ourselves is to do it racially in our homes. So with our families, meeting hall or his club, and that's what we're doing here. We can call it a meeting hall or a club, but it is a intentional and additional process. So after we go to school, after we go to work, we got more work to do. We have to come home and re-educate ourselves. But this will put us under the closest scrutiny and analysis of what appears to be education that's coming from other people. So part of this is to give us another perspective as to what education is, what it could be, and what it should be specifically for us. So when we go into public schools or normal education, a lot of it is geared towards managing somebody else's wealth, or conserving someone else's wealth. But when it comes to creating wealth for our people, or protecting our people, the things that apply specifically to us as a race here in this land, we don't get that specific education. So part of this is to give us a different perspective and hopefully get us to challenge the public education system and ask questions as to, how does this benefit me? How does this benefit my people? How does this address the major issues of our people? So, this is supposed to be a specific race-focused, all about us, all about our people education, and then we're supposed to counter that to what we get in America. Okay. Questions, comments? All right, let me see. We got a couple more minutes. I'm not gonna hold y'all after time. Wait. Okay, yeah. Why have Negroes in the past not been able to assume proper leadership? Why does Garvey believe that Negroes of the past have not been able to assume proper leadership?
Because they were educated to support the current system.
Yes. I think a perfect example would be W.E.B. Du Bois, who was supposed to be, the highest, the example of the highest level of intellect at that time. But the reason he was considered that was because he was one of the first, or the first, to graduate from a white, a prestigious white institution. So a lot of his solutions, NAACP, integration, talented 10th, things like that, they were Eurocentric. His solutions came from the system that was oppressing us. So without an additional education, we are naturally, I don't know if naturally is the right word, but we're basically slaves to the system that educated us. And we know that this system that educated us is predominantly white, same system that was created by the slave master. So how can we expect them to teach us how to liberate ourselves if they're the ones that put us in this position? And going back to was this in this lesson? Well, it's in this lesson. I don't have to go back to it. So, all right. But yeah, Garvey said that the Negro leaders, by not being able to do this in the past, educated Negroes have not been able to assume proper leadership of their race because their education was of a nature to cause them to support the present system, which is of no advantage to the Negro, except as a servant, serf, or slave, for which the purpose really the system was devised. So you can't go to the system to try to get a solution for a system that's putting you in a bad place. Like, it was designed that way.
I was going to say, going back to W.E.B. Du Bois, that it's also a good example of him just getting one part of the knowledge, because there's that hidden knowledge that they have, especially, I think he went to Harvard. So it was definitely a secret society taking place there, and he missed out on a lot of that.
Good point. Excellent point. And I'm not even sure, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not even sure if he knew what he was missing. And I think that's kind of part of the game that they play. And Garvey talks about that towards the end of this lesson. But it's like me, us as a black person, and then a white person goes through the same schools, and us as a black person, we just going home studying what we learned in the classroom. But the white person, they're going to their fraternities and clubs and getting a whole different type of education, which is secret, But when we graduate, if I don't know anything about that, I'm gonna think that I'm just as smart as the white guy, And I think that might have been one of the flaws of W.B. Du Bois as well, because white people knew everything that he knew, but he didn't know everything that they knew because they taught him. Right. All right. Well, I'm gonna just jump down. So I can't get the question out of that one. Garvey talks about do not swallow wholly the educational system of any other group except you have perfectly analyzed it and found it practical and useful to your group. Where have we heard that before? Do not swallow wholly the educational system of any other group except you have perfectly analyzed it and found it practical and useful to your group. This came up previously. Anybody know where we heard this before? Right, I'm gonna just jump to it. But I do expect us to have a comprehensive knowledge. We're not gonna just be, experts on one or two lessons. We need to be experts in the entire course. So I want to make sure we are aware of how the lessons are building on one another. But when you go back to, so this is, do not swallow wholly the educational system of any other group except you have perfectly analyzed it, found it practical and useful. So let me go to page 97. Page 6 talks about, one, in reading it is not necessary or compulsory that you agree with everything you read. You must always use or apply your own reasoning to what you have read based on what you already know and touching the facts of what you have read. So lesson on page 6, this is still in lesson 1. He echoed, do not swallow wholly the educational system of any other race. And then he talked about it again on page 11. I think he used similar words. Yep. Never swallow wholly, and that's when he says what the white man writes or says without first critically analyzing it and investigating it. So we're all the way on page 97 now. But again, it's my belief that a lot of this information repeats. And if you understand the core principles of Garvey, you'll start to see that he repeats a lot of the same things in different ways. Couple more questions. We're gonna go to 935. We're probably gonna go to 935 for that. How do we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life? What allows us to become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life?
Education.
Who said that?
Brother Omaysus.
Who said that?
Education.
Brother Omaysus?
Yes.
Right, you're killing it. It is by education that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life. I don't have the question for it, but this is going back to, all this stuff should start circling in your head and start, spiraling kind of and feeding on itself. But we talked about the state of man and how man is vile and naturally vile, and he has to be taught to be a different way. But then when we look at the progression of man throughout history, and when we look at the individuals that are under, the people that are being subjugated by those that are being elevated, we're being taught a certain education. So Garvey is saying, like, if we are in a certain condition, then we have to look at the education that we're being given and question if that education is leading us to a dangerous path, or if it's helping us get out of that path and liberate ourselves. So what does Garvey say that we must do with our education? What must we, how must we, what must we change about our education? Garvey says his education has been subversive, from a white man's education. He must, or our education, yeah. The Negro, yeah, fails the proper assumption of his duties and responsibility because he has been badly educated. He has universally failed to measure up to his duties and responsibilities as a man and as a race. His education has been subversive. He must now make his education practical and real. Hence, he must rearrange everything that affects him in his education to be of assistance to him in reaching out to his responsibilities and duties. So, in addition to having our white man education that teaches us to, uphold and manage their systems, we have to have an Afrocentric Black, education that teaches us how to get out of this condition and improve our conditions for our people globally. But we can't expect them to teach us that. Okay, this is where it goes to. So if a man will rob you of your wages, what will he also rob you of so that you won't know that he's robbing you of your wages?
Education.
Yes. If he will rob you of your wages, he will also rob you of your education that will enable you to know that he is robbing you of your wages. So that's from a wage perspective, but going back to an educational perspective, if he's giving us a bad, let me see. I guess that kind of answers that question. He's given us an education to put us in a certain place, so we can't rely on that education to get us out. We have to have our own education, basically. And when seeking education, who should we look to first?
So,
First yourself and those you know, and those who look like you. Those who look like you and relate to you ought to be the first before you know others. So race first again, and stop being so dependent upon other races to educate us. I think that was in another lesson. Well, no, I think we talked about if another race had come into power, that wouldn't mean anything different for us. We'd still be on the bottom. And in closing, I guess the last question I got, what religion does Garvey continuously talk about, and how does he, and I'm gonna ask a little deeper question, how does he try to compare his vision for Black people to that religion?
Jews. And
Yes.
he talks about them having their own educational system as well.
Anybody else want to add to that? Sorry, go ahead, Omaysus.
He gets a dual education.
Yes.
One from the state and one from his race.
Yes. What's the benefit of that?
He knows more.
It goes what we've been talking about the whole time, having a, being able to not be robbed of the things that you need to be able to reach back to your highest state of a man, provide for yourself and your people. But
Yes. Let me summarize it. I guess he does it kind of here. Therefore, if in no other way in particular, secure education and have your own, such as the Jews, who have outside of any common education in particular and peculiar education of their own, which augments or adds to or modifies the common education that they have gathered in the community with others. So they get the basic everyday education, but they also get a personal, special education for their race and for their people. He ends with, by the view of the fact that the Jew gets a dual education, the education of the state and the education of his race, he is always in a unique position to worsen or to better his compatriots of another race in the community. So he has special knowledge, and he can use that knowledge to help others in the community. And this is where we were talking about the school system and W.B. Du Bois being a black man in a white school and not getting the full education. He is always making more out of everything than the Gentile. This is related Jew to the Gentile, because he knows all about the Gentile while the Gentile knows nothing about him. So in summary, Garvey was fascinated with Judaism, Jews, and how they could be dual natured, to where they could, come into our schools, our systems, fully invest themselves in that and be successful in that. But at the same time, they would have a second education that was specific just to their race, and it was a private education. So they knew the public information, and they also knew the private information, where everybody else in the public had access to the public information, but they didn't have access to the private information. And that's the same thing that Garvey's trying to do with us, to where he's trying to create a group of our people that understand that the value of that special education, and take the time to develop it and teach it. So it's 4 minutes past. It's 9:40, just about. I don't want to talk too long. Any questions, comments before we move to close?
President John, when he talked about, it says that the Jews, that modifies the common education that they have gathered in the community with others. It reminded me of what we just read in Institution, and how we gather the information about the previous institution that currently exists and expand them into making them our own. So that education.
Yeah. Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when we really get into this mindset of Garvey, this philosophy of Garvey, we should see a lot of the same things repeating. And I wasn't able to really follow along as you were reading the lesson for the night, but I did catch some of that information, and I hope we're pulling all this stuff together, because when you really think about it, let me share something. So when you really think about it, everything that we've been discussing since lesson 8 through 12, all this stuff is kind of interchangeable thus far. social system, diplomacy, economy, man, institutions. A lot of this stuff is interchangeable, and this is the second, from my understanding, this is the second level of the course. This was the first level in this green. This is personal development. This is all about you, God, and the goals of the organization, but getting grounded in what we are saying that we want to be in regards to leaders of the organization. This section here is helping us understand organization as it is currently and how it works and why we need it. But yeah, we should see a lot of repetitive themes in this section. I haven't read Universe recently, so I can't really speak on that one or the other ones. But just based on my understanding and my summary of looking back at it, that's my take. First part was personal development, and now we're getting an understanding of organization until we get to, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly where. 7 or 8 lessons. But there's phases. So personal development, understanding of organization, and then these up here, 5-year plan, history, living for something, kindness, commercial. This is future stuff. So this is our plan moving forward. But these lessons here are understanding the current state of humanity and diplomacy, interaction of nations, governments, organizations, things like that. Yeah. All right. We'll close out with the pledge to the red, black, and green flags, and then we'll get out of here. If you would, please take the mics off me, repeat after me. Well, was there any other questions before we move to close? I don't want to ignore anybody. Okay. And again, thank you, First Vice President Omaysus, for the reading. Next week, we will be off for everybody. We'll have a holiday break next week, and we'll come back in January. Pledge to the red, black, and green flag. I commit my body, mind, and spirit.
I commit my body, mind, and spirit
To the protection, defense, and security
to the protection, defense, and security
of the red, black, and green.
of the red, black, and green.
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa
and the liberation of her scattered Black children.
and the liberation of her scattered Black children.
I accept for myself and my descendants
I accept for myself and my descendants
the teachings of universal African nationalism
the teachings of universal African nationalism.
and I promise that our children will be instilled
And I promise that our children will be instilled
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people,
in order that the cause of our struggle
in order that the cause of our struggle
will neither falter nor fail
will neither falter nor fail
until all Black people are free and united
until all Black people are free and united
through one God,
through one God,
one aim,
one aim,
one destiny.
and one destiny.
Y'all have a blessed week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
Your break.
Everyone enjoy your holiday.
Right. Right.
Grace first.
Thank you.
Peace.